This is Bad Movies We Love, part of the Shice Podcast Network.
If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Hello, Bad Movie Lovers, and welcome back to Bad Movies We Love. I'm your host, Nick Scheist.
The master of this stupid stuff!
Whether this is your first time checking out the show or you're a longtime listener, thank you for pressing play on Bad Movies We Love. If you're like me and you like your trash with a little bit of treasure buried inside, you've come to the right place. Now, I don't enjoy doing the sales pitch, but I do believe in this show, and I think you do too. So in order to help me continue doing this show to the best of my abilities, please make sure to follow or subscribe to the show on your preferred podcast platform so that you never miss an episode, because we've got a lot of movies on deck. And if you've ever come across one of the movies we've covered here on the show and said, wait a second, this movie rules, please leave a rating and a review, because those reviews help more weirdos like us find the show. And if you really love the show and you want to be a bigger part of it, then make sure to check out the exclusive bonus episodes and series on the Resistance Frontlines members only at badmovieswelove.captivate.fm/support. We are shifting gears slightly for August, but still staying in the superhero realm as we take a look at super sequels. And we are going big right out of the gates. Newman from the Movies for Dayz podcast is back to talk about Ghost Rider again, and this time it's Spirit of Vengeance.
And I think it was all just a lot scrappier, dirtier, faster, and more quirky and oddball.
Looking back at Nick Cage's career, I think this is a very interesting performance from him.
The writer does what the writer wants to do, and I've come to be really disgusted with myself as a result.
Forget all that shit of you being a movie star. Let's get back to you being an actor.
His voice acting is fantastic.
So you're Nicolas Cage. Of course, I believe that you had two pet cobras.
Hey, I got what you need for those shakes, my friend. Kerrigan must have told me about that thing that killed his men last night, huh? Yeah? That thing is inside of me. See, you're a bad man. And this thing, the writer, he feeds on bad men, and he's hungry. He's hungrier than he's been years, and that's why I'm shaking. Because right now, the only thing standing between you and the writer is me. And he's scraping at the door! Scraping at the door! All right, if you don't tell me what I want to know, I'm gonna let him out.
Newman, welcome back to the show. You were here for Ghost Rider before. You're here for Ghost Rider again. Welcome back.
Damn, Skippy, thank you for having me. I feel like we've got something. We started something, and we need to complete it.
We're gonna complete it. I don't know how much more Ghost Rider property there is out there beyond this, unless we were to like get into TV shows, but then we lose the Nicolas Cage of it all, and there's not as much fun in that. But yes, we are here discussing Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance from 2011, the sequel to Ghost Rider, but in many ways its own movie, very disconnected from the first movie. I think both to its benefit and to its detriment. But we'll get into that a little bit later. I want to know, sort of, when did you see this movie originally?
I don't think I saw this for the first time until maybe 2015, 2016. I allowed it to totally pass me by. And it was only in the aftermath when people were talking about it, and when I got into the Crank movies, and I was kind of into this notion of appreciating films on different levels than just my own concept of good or bad, but appreciating movies that had tonal choices and a certain kind of energy and a certain kind of flair and made big swings and shit like that. And all of those things were being applied to this fucking Ghost Rider sequel. And this was also at a time when I was really fully embracing my unironic love of Nicolas Cage as a cinema star. Because as much as I love this guy and I praise him like mad, and that I do, I can't say that I was always one of the converted. I can cop to it. When I was a much younger man and I was a lot more simplistic about these things, I bought into the whole meme culture, making fun of him and treating him as my own punching bag whenever I felt like it. But I came around, and this was part of that awakening, when I was saying to myself, oh, no. I want to see this because I hear that Nick Cage is batshit in this movie. And so, yeah, I watched it at home on the couch, and it knocked me out. It blew me away. I said to myself, why wasn't this a bigger deal? And why is it so often slept on? Because I think this movie's badass.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, like, at this point in his career, he's doing this as well. Because, with Cage, like, I had seen, like, Raising Arizona was one of the first movies that, like, I can actually remember seeing. And I don't even know why my mom showed me that. It was super not, like, appropriate for me at the age, but I had seen sort of, like, more violent stuff at that time. But I went from that, and then, like, Cage, of course, in The Rock, but then I don't remember the name of the lottery one off the top of my head with was it Bridget Fonda as the waitress?
Oh, It Could
Lucky
Happen to
Ticket. I don't
You.
know what it. I don't remember. Yeah, It Could Happen to You. Thank you.
Yeah, with Rosie
That
Perez.
one. Yeah, he does the Weatherman adaptation. So it's like I saw a lot of movies that I liked of his before he sort of became like the internet meme type of actor. But then during that sort of, we'll call it a downswing, maybe, in terms of like his star value, he still does some very interesting stuff. And it's like he was just doing so much that I didn't see a lot of it. And he still had some like big kind of studio stuff, whether it was Next or Knowing or like Drive Angry was kind of like on the cusp of that as well. Like he was still doing stuff where he was kind of in the spotlight, but also doing a lot of like smaller indie projects as well, where he's making like maybe 5 movies a year in some cases. And so I think I fell victim to it as well, in that I sort of knew that there was a level of Cage that I felt I was comfortable with. And when I would see some of the other projects at a distance, I was a little bit less interested in taking it on as a representation of like my love of Nicolas Cage as an actor. I was like, oh, he's making poor decisions, right? um, and it's not necessarily even true going back and having watched some of that stuff, but at that time I was like, oh, these are like, it really just seemed so much different than the stuff that he was able to like be cast in when he was the Nicolas Cage of Hollywood lore. And so there was a sort of reckoning that had to come with that. And then he still makes a movie like Jiu-Jitsu a couple years ago that's like really bad. And even his character in it, I think, is kind of like, why is he even in this movie? Like he's an old hippie that knows drunken kung fu or something, or it's not even drunken kung fu. He does like capoeira, but it's very clearly a stunt double. And for a guy who's like thrown kicks and done fighting scenes in his movies for years, I feel like if you can design a fighting style for a Keanu Reeves at his age for John Wick, Or, I mean, you've seen the Batman movies with Christian Bale. Like, that shit is all elbows. I feel like you could do something
It's like in
to lean into.
yeah, it's like in Dolomite is my name. When he's like, can you shoot around him to make it look like he knows what the fuck he's doing with this terrible kung fu? It's like, no.
Yes. So I think there's stuff like that where, like, if Cage is going to be in that kind of role, at least lean into him being there. And I think that's something that this Ghost Rider sequel does significantly better than the first. Uh I don't know. They are the way he even plays Johnny Blaze in both movies is very different. But, like, how do you look at that arc from one to the next?
So the two big things is there's my own take on this, and then there's also what Cage said over and over in interviews. His thing over and over in interviews was that the first one was kind of like a grim fairy tale where things are dangerous, but it is supposed to be mostly family friendly. Your kids should be able to come and be both scared and entertained by the first movie. The second movie, he said he wanted it to be more of a nightmare experience because Johnny Blaze isn't this sort of fresh-faced kid who did the wrong thing for the right reasons and got in over his head, and now he's dealing with all this craziness. Now he's this guy who's been wrestling with the curse for 8 years and has decided to shut everybody out because you can't get close to this thing without getting burned by the hellfire, as it were. And he's come to see the curse itself as almost like a werewolf thing, where it's like, it's going to come out, it's going to overtake me. I'm not really in control. The writer does what the writer wants to do. And I've come to be really disgusted with myself as a result, and really feeling all that cursed. And as a result, he intentionally gets rid of his southern accent because he doesn't want anyone to find him. And he changes his hair because he doesn't want anyone to find him. But like, for me, the first one was a really good example of comic book movies, you know, superhero movies as they existed with big budgets at that time. The sequel is a really good version of a comic book movie where this feels like an isolated book with this one arc with Ghost Rider. And yeah, this is technically part 2, but the goal with the movie, and I do think they succeeded, is that this is just supposed to be Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance. You don't have to have seen the last one to go into this. And the next movie that they made, should they have made, you know, had they made another movie, it wouldn't have had to be, okay, the next adventure. It's just another adventure, kind of like Indiana Jones was originally supposed to be.
Yeah, and I think the not titling it Ghost Rider 2 like is very intentional and very aware of that. And it's like, it's sort of like a dark mirror of the first film in that all of the glossiness that was present in the first film is gone. Uh like the design of the Ghost Rider himself is very different. He's like all charred. The slickness of the studio production is gone because they do a lot of location filming and they're not shooting on sound stages. Like the bike is different looking. You don't have that sort of like high handlebar, long front wheel motorcycle. Like, this is something that's a little bit more practical and down to earth for the most part, like, given that it's Ghost Rider.
Also,
And you have a lot more like naturalistic environment.
And am I nuts, or is Donald Logue in blackface in this one? Fucks up with that.
Is he? Is he?
No, it's just a stupid joke. But no, Idris Elba is such a wonderful addition to the cast. And I have to ask, this is such a non sequitur, but I've got to ask, do you fully embrace and dig the French accent he's doing, or did you find yourself going, you could just let him be British with that awesome gruff British accent he does? That would have been fine.
It is weird that he's French. And like in the director's commentary, you have Brian Taylor and Mark Neveldine talking about their approach to this in sort of like a very old school kind of way where all of Europe is basically like this unknown entity to America. And so as long as they're European, it kind of like didn't matter. So it's like they hired the British guy to be French. They have like Romanians being Turkish. They just kind of like they kind of threw caution to the wind, and they went very much a very broad approach to that, and they acknowledge it and that it's a weird choice when talking about it. I think Elba is a good enough actor where it doesn't bother me, but I would not put this anywhere near the top of the food chain when it comes to Idris Elba performances.
Yeah, I like that he's here. I love what he's doing, but he is so arguably better in so many other things. Shoot,
Yes.
when they were promoting this movie, he was in the middle of shooting Pacific Rim, or he was just about to start Pacific Rim, one or the other. And there's a film where he's not even, I don't know, the second most important character, and he still fucking dominates every moment he's on screen. He's just amazing to watch in that film.
Yeah, and I think, he was Brian Taylor and Mark Neveldine said that the casting decision was sort of based off seeing him in Rock and Rolla, which is interesting because I feel like that's a significantly better role for him as well. It's my favorite Guy Ritchie film, so I'm happy that that was sort of their inspiration for it. But that character in that movie is nothing like the Idris Elba that we see in this movie. And even Idris had talked a little bit about working with two directors. He had never worked with two directors at the same time before. So he was a little bit on the side of like, who am I supposed to take notes from? Like, where do I get my direction from? But he said that he enjoyed the process and that he actually liked working with them because they were very intense in their filmmaking and very much like hands-on. And so I think, yeah, I think if like you just remove the accent and sort of like let him be the sort of guy that we've seen in some other films, it enriches that one character and maybe probably makes that performance better. But given that like Nick Cage is doing a weird thing, being significantly different than the guy that we saw in the other Ghost Rider film playing the same character, like I don't think Idris Elba can come into this and be like, I'm gonna play this like perfectly straight down the line, and that being normal will not work for this movie, right? Like at least not with that character.
It gives it a very trans-European flair, right? We've got representation from all over Europe, and then this one asshole from America, and also hell. I mean, come on, he's by way of hell, and to kind of make up our team. But yeah, I do, just because I love his voice when it's really deep and grounded, and I feel like you could have changed no dialogue, changed nothing about the character, and changed nothing about the costuming or anything else. Just let him have that deep, grounded British accent that is his own. And I don't know, I just would have liked it a little more. But I don't know, it's such a little thing to nitpick, because honestly, I really do think this fucking flick is awesome. I like it better than the first one.
Oh, interesting. Well, he also, Idris has like those weird contacts in that like make his eyes yellow. And I was like, maybe I missed something, but like, how did he survive flying off the cliffside in that car accident? He just walks up to Cage.
There's like a Looney Tunes
super
shot.
being?
No, there's like a Looney Tunes shot where he references it via voiceover, and it's a super quick cut, like 2 seconds of him in a tree, and he's like upside down, hanging there, comically looking at the camera like, huh, as if to say, boy, I'm lucky this tree was here to catch me. But like, it's like blink and you miss it. It's a fucking Looney Tunes gag.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up because you had mentioned sort of this being a better like comic book movie than the original Ghost Rider, and like this actually has a lot of those interstitials of like animated sequences, which I kind of really enjoy. It's one of the things that when the first like when people were comparing the Kill Bill halves, I was like, I'm always partial to the first one because of the inclusion of the animated elements of the story in the first film. And so I think when you're telling these kinds of stories, it actually is beneficial to the world building and sort of the connective tissue to the source material to include some of this animated stuff. And so I really liked it in this. And granted, like, you know, they're working with a lot less budget than the first film. So a lot of that is shorthand for getting around some of the stuff that the first movie was trying to do. But you don't actually you don't need to retread a lot of the stuff that the first film did. And I think going in a completely different direction, taking it out of the States, taking it like out of a city, sort of making it very rural, very naturalistic, it was a good choice because it gave them the freedom to really explore all of the character work that they wanted to do without having to sort of like incorporate that into the context of a larger world that we're very familiar with, right? Like, like had it continued with where we were, we've seen a lot of other superhero movies at that point in time where these superheroes exist within the confines of cities and them having to navigate what it means to be a hero in a city. Like you see it in Spider-Man, you see it in Batman, you see it in Superman. All of those things like matter. So to sort of remove all of that texture and just be like, this is a road movie kind of, it really gives it some creative and artistic freedom that the first movie didn't have.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the Hellboy comics that I've read. Because full disclosure, I haven't read a lot of Ghost Rider, but I've read me some Hellboy, and this is so similar to that. When you're dealing with demonic, otherworldly, old world evil, ritualistic kind of shit, it helps to not be in a densely populated modern architecture environment. It the two really just don't support each other, and so if that's what you're doing, that needs to be what it's all about, is the meshing of those two things, right? Or the bumping together of those two things. We need places where we've got ancient architecture, old monasteries, and you know, mountains and shit that's all epic, very and that's what you get
Yeah.
here. And it being a road movie as well. I love that it becomes this kind of family road trip in the middle, because it is about this sort of growth and this humanizing of this demonic child, you might say, who, unlike Johnny Blaze, he didn't make an agreement. He was chosen. It wasn't his choice, right? He was born into this curse, whereas Johnny sort of chose the curse. And so there's this neat need to kind of become a surrogate father to him as the movie goes on. I love the animated sequences. I think they're a very intelligent way to get around the lower budget. And I also think that it's a wonderful promise of style and tone right up at the front, doing this intro and recap. And it's even better that we see them again. It's not like it was a one and done just for our intro and recap. It's like, no, this is a part of our storytelling and we'll utilize it again later. And I thought it was so right for the energy that's coming across with this film. If it's okay, I just want to throw a quote from one of the directors that I found very enlightening about how they do things. He
Go
said,
for it.
he said, "We only know one way to do it. We shoot punk rock."
Makes sense. I mean, they're coming from like the Crank franchise
Fuck
heading
yeah.
into this. Uh, and so, yeah, like their style and their audience, and like even watching behind the scenes, like Mark Neveldine is out there on rollerblades, like hanging on to the back of a motorcycle. He's the guy holding the camera. When you see the shot of Idris flying off the motorcycle, that's Mark with the camera on the rig flying off the side of the hill with him. And so like he's very hands-on. He's like basically, a stunt choreographer with a camera at that point. And so, Idris was like, no, this guy's a maniac. But like the energy, you gotta respect it. So there is a sort of rewriting of like the contract of director and actor at that point. Like when you're willing to be super close in that shot to that motorcycle crash, it's like you're maybe like 6 inches to a foot away from that motorcycle snapping your leg if you don't time that stunt correctly. So yeah, it's like he's willing to put himself on the line for the shot that he wants to get. And I think when, you're communicating that from the top down, you're telling your whole cast and crew, like, I'm willing to like die to get the shot that I want to get. And, that's not something that you can just easily replicate. So a lot of credit to them for that. And, I'm going to, for the people that are listening and they're like, well, you're, 20 minutes into this episode and you haven't gotten into the details, I'm going to get into it. But first, I wanted to ask you something that came up when I was talking to Ben and we were doing our episode on Dog Eat Dog for the Cage Against the Machine series. And that is voiceover work. We get a lot of Cage voiceover in this. And what I said to him at the time is like, I feel like he's a fantastic voice actor. And I feel like voiceover is often used as a crutch sometimes. I know people are very averse to it in certain situations because it feels like an exposition crutch. But I feel like Nick Cage as a voice actor is a very, very like compelling listen as a narrator. And he's got a very interesting voice to listen to. Like it's not quite of like the Morgan Freeman ilk where you would sort of like have a nature documentary or something be narrated by him. But there is something in the way that he does his line readings for voiceover narration that I find to be very compelling. And it works in the vast majority of situations where I hear Cage use it. So I'm just curious, like you've done and you still do your Cage series. Is that something that has come up in discussion for you or as a point of emphasis one way or the other?
I don't remember if we've ever gotten into a discussion about his voiceover work on Rage for Cage. As of yet, every movie we've covered has been one where he plays in the live action and doesn't have a whole ton of voiceover like you get in like adaptation or something like that. But, now that you bring it up, yeah, I think his voice acting is fantastic. I think there's a lot of richness there. I think we get that in the Spider-Verse work that he did. I think we get it in adaptation. I think we get it in this. And it's in as much as voiceover is sometimes poo-pooed by people who don't like it to be seen as used as a crutch. I think that like so many things, it's a tool. It's one of the tools in the box, and it's offensive when it's used lazily, it's used too much, it's used in the wrong way, or, you do a Harrison Ford in Blade Runner. These are the things that make voiceover bad, but on its own, I don't think it's a bad tool, and I think when Nicolas Cage is put to the task, he always succeeds with it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pay closer attention to movies where he actually uses it, because I found just like in the most recent handful of examples, or I just feel like it's a good choice for those movies. I think he does a little bit in Matchstick Men as well, but it has been a while since I've seen that, so I don't want to overstep. But as promised, let's crack open the film file and take a look at the details. So this is directed by Brian Taylor and Mark Neveldine. This actually makes Brian Taylor one of the two-timers here at Bad Movies We Love, as we talked about his work with Nicolas Cage in Mom and Dad back in November of 2025. This was written by Scott M. Gimple, Seth Hoffman, and David S. Goyer. course, starring Nicolas Cage, Idris Elba, and Violante Placido, featuring Johnny Whitworth, Ciaran Hinds, Fergus Reardon, and briefly but enjoyably Christopher Lambert. Music composed by David Sardi, cinematography by Brandon Trost, edited by Brian Burden, production design by Kevin Phipps, who I talked about when he did the Judge Dredd episode. Art directors, Addie Curlia, Stephen Dobrik, Serban Perupka, and Justin Brown. Set decoration by Dominic Capon, and costumes by Bohana Nikitovic. Almost entirely foreign cast and crew from Turkey and Romania. Completely upends the sort of like the Hollywood gloss of the original film. And so there's a lot of different things going on in the in-between the first and second film. Like, the only thing that the two movies have in common is Nicolas Cage being Ghost Rider.
And you could even argue they don't even have that in common, because in the first Ghost Rider, he only got to portray Johnny Blaze. He didn't get to portray Ghost Rider. It's always a stunt guy. And so in this movie, it was a big thing for him to be able to say, no, I get to actually be both Johnny Blaze and Ghost Rider. It was something in their promotion that came up a lot, where it's like, in the dual role of Johnny Blaze and Ghost Rider, Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, it was something where Cage enjoyed the sort of the ability to tap into a character that he didn't get to before that. And he had even mentioned, like, I've played dual roles before, but not really where I was playing like a creature, like this non-human entity. So he got to like stretch his wings a little bit and lean into it. And he was telling the story about his two pet cobras, which, like, the way he says it, like, if you can believe that, it's like, yes, you're Nicolas Cage. Of course, I believe that you had two pet cobras. And he was describing the way that they danced for him. And so he wanted to like embody that sort of like swaying and then very vicious, like striking nature. And so he like imbued his version of Ghost Rider with these snake characteristics. But also, like, his Johnny Blaze is very different in this as well. Like, there are some moments of humor in the first one, but I feel like the humor is a lot more superficial in the first movie. I feel like the way that he plays Blaze in this is a lot more quirky, a lot more eccentric. Like, granted, like, what we see in Ghost Rider 1 is that he's a teenager, maybe like 17 or 18 when he signs the contract, and then we come back and he's an adult, maybe supposed to be in his 30s. So we're talking about maybe like 10 to 15 years that he's been Ghost Rider, but hasn't actually like wolfed out. He hasn't become Ghost Rider in that way yet. And so now the character that we're getting has been Ghost Rider. He's been living with like the burden of being Ghost Rider for the last 8 years, and it's clearly taken a toll on his general like mental health. But it also like it freed up Nicolas Cage to do some of like the Nicolas Cage type of weird acting that actually like makes him a compelling screen presence. Like, there's like some scene where he's like chewing gum or he's like eating something where they're at the club and talking to her, and like that sort of behavior, describing like the rider scratching at the door, and he's like, I'm gonna let him out, man.
I love that. I love
like
that
those yeah, like those moments of him really getting to like be free, I think, of the studio confines of like, look, you got to rein it in. We need Nicolas Cage, the movie star, to be Ghost Rider. And I think that was kind of gone. Like, we want Nicolas Cage, the actor, to be Johnny Blaze and Ghost Rider here. And, you know, I think it was Kevin from our Irish buddy Kevin in the film club group that had mentioned he really likes this movie as well because of the motion capture side of it being all done by Cage. And it wasn't just like motion capture either. Like he painted his face and he wore the black contact lenses and he's wearing like a LED glowing headset. So watching the behind the scenes of him doing that, there was a small part of me that I was like, I wish they did practical effects and just let this be like, if you want an insane movie, let that be the Ghost Rider that we see like when he's in full transformation mode. But the fact that like he got to do that, and there's a lot less talking, the physicality of the character is a lot different. Like the pen and stare is different. Like the way he interacts with other people in the world. And like what Cage was saying, like he wanted to bring the character back to sort of like ancient stage acting where masks were involved. And he's like, I wanted to give the fellow actors that I was working with like something to respond to. And it's funny listening to some of his castmates talk about him being in makeup and being in character as Ghost Rider was like, when he's on set like that, he's not friendly, he's not talking to them, he's not doing any of that stuff. And then he would sort of be Nick Cage and like be funny. And then they're like, even just like with the contacts and stuff, he was scary to be around. And none of them really like knew what he was going to look like when he first walked out there. So his first appearance on set as the Ghost Rider was very interesting for the rest of the cast. And there, like, if you have the, maybe it's on the DVD too, but on the Blu-ray there is the deleted scenes where you can see him. They do the entire scene without the CG, and it's really cool to actually see it happen that way, because like you can totally see the like the full range of the weirdness that Cage wanted to get into. And one of the sort of the biggest collaborative wins between Neveldine and Taylor and Cage is that when he had a weird idea, he wasn't shut down, right? Cage is like, I want to do this weird thing. And they're like, sounds great. Let's do it. So you really get to see some of the freedom that comes with that. And I think we've seen more of that as Cage has begun to work with, I think, younger filmmakers, where it's like the level of his experience began to outpace the people that he was working with. He's no longer like, you know, I talked about The Rock recently, and it's like, yes, he's at the height of his like Nick Cage powers. He's very good in that, very funny. Rock's a great movie. Michael Bay's kind of a young filmmaker at the time. Cage also kind of still a fairly young Hollywood star at that point. And now we're at the point where like he's making Pig. He's fantastic in Pig, but that was the director's first film. And so Cage is very heavily involved in helping with a lot of those decisions. And we're seeing more and more of that. And it's really been an interesting creative process to watch unfold later in his career.
It really reminds me of someone else you and I were discussing off mic not too long ago, Danny DeVito. Getting together with the guys
Yes.
at Always Sunny in Philadelphia. You've got these young, energetic comedy creatives who are working with this huge star who has all this experience and who's absolutely amazing. What's funny is that when you look at the interviews, it's the other way around, where Danny DeVito is sort of telling them, hey, I'm old, and what I think is funny isn't necessarily what younger people think is funny. Whatever you guys want me to do,
Yeah.
I will do it, and I will do it the best I can, even if I don't get it. It's almost the reverse with Cage and these young filmmakers, where they want to facilitate his expertise and his ideas and decision making. But what I love is that it's both based on trust. It's artists of different generations trusting each other and lifting each other up and putting something out in the world together that we were not getting. That's the other thing about a movie like Spirit of Vengeance. This is not at all your bog standard, typical big budget superhero movie that was coming out, you know, like the first Ghost Rider was a great example of. This is more fun. This is less formulaic. And as, what's his name? Johnny Whitworth kept saying, it's frenetic. He spoke a lot about the way these guys shoot, where they've got two cameras going at the same time. And there's so much improv that's encouraged that almost no two takes are exactly the same. It really puts the actor on their toes, and when you've gotten used to working in a more conventional way, it's not at all what you expect. It's something you have to adjust to, and it allows for more, it lays the groundwork for more excitement and for less boredom amongst an actor who maybe has already done 5 takes, but we've got to do 5 more. It really sounds like a fun way to make a fucking movie.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to have a lot of fun making the movies, and granted, like, this is a very difficult shoot overall for a number of reasons that we'll get into in a little bit, but to manage to still imbue the film with that level of energy overall, and to really infuse the character portrayal with a completely different style and different sort of level of volume, I'll say, than we see in the original portrayal of Johnny Blaze. I can see why Cage wanted to come back. Let me take a moment, though, go to the tail of the tape, and we will find out exactly why we're talking about Ghost Rider 2. This has an IMDb score of 4.4, a Metascore of 34, a Rotten Tomatoes critic score of 18%, an audience score of 31%, a letterbox rating of 1.9, but a Google user's thumbs up rating of 72%. So just the average random person watching gave it a thumbs up, giving us a Bad Movies We Love total of 39.5 out of 100. Significantly lower than Ghost Rider, which I don't even remember what it was. I think it was in like the mid 50s. I don't think I have that set of notes still saved, but yeah, pretty far down there. And I think further, significantly further down than I would have thought. Like, if I just watched the movie, I wouldn't have expected it to be that low. But of course, I had to do my homework beforehand, and I'm like, oh, okay, definitely bad enough to be on this show.
And I wonder if that has a bit to do with the time in which it came out. If there's something that I've really clocked over the last 10 to 15 years of filmmaking, it's that audiences have slowly gotten more comfortable, or rather larger numbers of them have gotten more comfortable with big swings, with stylistic choices that are loud and daring and bold. I think if you really look back at the aughts going into the 20 teens, majority moviegoers like bland. They like bog standard. They like predictable. It's the McDonald's of cinema. They want it. And I feel that this was a movie that hit a little too early. I think if a movie like this came out now, or even 3 years ago, it would have had a huge audience.
Yeah, it is sort of a I think part of it is that it is sort of very clearly a horror movie to some degree, where the original Ghost Rider is not that. And so you're going from like this sort of like action comedy superhero gloss, which is like you said, it's basically like the industry standard with varying levels of like grittiness attached to that. But a lot of the sameness and the homogeny that came in the superhero genre was that like, oh, they all have to operate with this certain level of baseline humor so that it is enjoyable for like a wide range of people, where like this movie is clearly designed for a much smaller audience than that of the original Ghost Rider. And I mean, I really love a lot of the horror elements, and I personally would prefer this to be even more horror oriented. I would like a straight rated R horror Ghost Rider movie, and I think it could be awesome given what the character does and who he is and what he's gone through. And this might be as close as we get, but in terms of like audience perception, right? I went back and looked, and the original Ghost Rider clocked in on our board at 48.8, which is still a sub 50 movie, but this movie is 10 points lower on the board than the original Ghost Rider, where I know you said you like this one better. I've heard that echoed as well. I think there is a good case to be made, honestly, that this is the better of the two. I think if you look at it from like a holistic acting perspective, I would say that Cage's performance, at the very least, is much better in this movie than it is in the first one. So it's like you get a lot more of him. I think losing some of the cast in the first movie changes things. Like, personally, I did not like Ciaran Hinds in this film. Maybe that was because I liked Peter Fonda in the first film, and I wanted to see that continued. But you're casting a lot of sort of people who don't have the same level of like name recognition, right? You're casting a lot of local talent versus like going through Hollywood casting and getting the supporting cast that you had in the first movie. But both Eva Mendes and Peter Fonda like had the opportunity to come back for this and declined. Peter Fonda read the first 5 pages of the script and said, "Nope, I will be moving on. Thank you." So it's one of those things where I think the script is not necessarily the totality of the movie.
Yeah,
Like, I
I
think
would
if
agree.
you like the vision, I think is like bigger than what's on the page. And I think because of the style of the filmmakers, it's like it's a little bit of it is sort of like a trust us bro kind of mentality. Like, the page looks this way, but trust us, we're going to do it the way that we want to do it, and it's going to turn out well. And you see a lot of that because the first thing they wanted to do, for example, with the excavator was initially meant to be a wrecking ball, but it's like we can't get our hands on a wrecking ball, so the excavator is what we're going to do. And like they just made that their own and made it look great when it happens. And so I think if you were to show the finished product of what the movie is and give that to Peter Fonda and be like, this is what it's going to look like, he may have come in and been like, you know what? Like, all right, I see the vision now, and I'd be more willing to step into those shoes. But it's like, it's a very different portrayal of the Rourke side of the character as well. And it's like, I like Ciaran Hinds in a lot of movies. This just doesn't happen to be one of them. I don't think he necessarily like makes the film bad or bogs it down. I feel like maybe he wasn't necessary. Like, we've already dealt with the devil in the first film, and like now there's this like secondary story about like the devil, and like, but he's a human. Why is he a human? And he humanly impregnated via immaculate conception into this woman, and now she's birthing this. Like, it just got a little bit convoluted where it's like, with the story and with the devil signing contracts for souls, like I kind of get that. But there was a deleted scene too with Ciaran Hinds renting a car, and it's like, why was this in the script? It's like him arguing with the guy renting him the car about pricing and about contract details, and then he sort of like telepathically slams him into the ceiling. And I'm just like, it's just so weird. And like the whole time in my head, I'm like, I feel like Peter Fonda is like very casual, very cool, very suave in the way that he portrays the character. And I feel like just like his overall presence and charisma is very adept to those kind of situations, where this was like, why are you haggling about the price of the car rental? Like, I get it that you're like a contracts guy, right? I get it that,
this is what I do.
You really want the line in the movie. Yeah, you really want the line in the movie where you say the devil is in the details. I get that part of it, but you're also the devil. Like, money doesn't mean anything to you. He could charge you $1 million a day for your shitty rental car, and you just materialize the money or do what you have to do. Like, or convince him to. There shouldn't be any haggling when you're the devil. Like,
well, I feel like
you know what I mean.
So much about his character in this movie for this story is that this human vessel he's inhabiting is wasting away, right? So he's feeling that weakness sort of taking him over. And I feel like his pride is getting the better of him as the movie goes along and inches along. It's not that you will destroy the devil, but you can bitch slap him back to hell, and it'll be very satisfying. And so I feel like many of the choices come from that. We're seeing an insecure, decaying old man who is going to be overtaken by the younger generation, and he's not fucking happy about it. And he's going to try to control that process as much as possible. I don't know. It all kind of works for me, partly because I've seen these sorts of tropes in these kind of paranormal comics, things like Hellblazer, things like Spawn, where, you know, the devil character, whether it's Mephisto or Malbolgia or whatever, they're tricking somebody on Earth, usually a demonic person, into fathering a child, and then that child is going to be important, just like Jesus was important. It's an easy touchstone because it's the oldest story there is, and it's just having a devil version of it or a demonic version of it, and then just kind of riffing from there. So for me, it's fairly accessible, especially since we're really digging into Johnny Blaze, Ghost Rider, thinking, I'm awful, I'm evil, I can't touch people, learning, no, you know what? Here's a kid who I'm the perfect father figure for. I can do that. Again, a very tropey thing that we're all very familiar with, but we get to do it with chains and fire, and it looks so goddamn good. Real pyrotechnics, real car crashes, real stunts, baby. And Idris Elba riding a motorcycle. Yes, give it to me. So yeah, it's great for me, just energy and tone and confidence and style. Everything that happens is part of the package, the why you watch this movie, not necessarily the story being so good. But I'll double down on what I said before. This feels like a single, really great, fleshed out comic book arc that's all on its own with an established character. And they said, we're going to make a movie out of that. Like, that's how it feels, especially with the quirky humor. You know, I get it. You're the devil's baby mama. I love that shit. What was the other one? 3 of my guys got turned into matchsticks last night by a guy on a motorcycle with his head on fire. The movie has this quirky, confident swagger that, again, I think was a little ahead of its time for most mainstream audiences.
Yeah, I could see that. And maybe it doesn't look like it's entered like reappraisal territory at this point, as it's still like trudging along in the sub 40 range for these scores. But there was a comic within probably the last like 5 years, Ghost Rider comic, where he becomes the king of hell. And so like they did that with Spawn too. So you see, you know, these are not stories that are necessarily completely out there, completely ridiculous. I think I maybe would have liked more of Ciaran Hinds, like decaying more slowly over time, like to see him go from like a more confident place to a weakened place, where that kind of happens like very quickly. He doesn't really even show up in the movie until like, oh, we've been talking about this dude, and then he pops in and here he is, and then he does this thing and you see him kind of like have a stroke because of it. And so like you see that, and that other scene, that is the deleted scene, like I guess you're getting a little bit of a glimpse of that earlier. Just, yeah, the handling of that was maybe like a little too much focused on the negotiation of a car rental. And so like I understand why they cut it out, the movie overall. Yeah,
I do like his I do like his analogy though, when he's explaining why he needs to transfer himself into a new vessel, and he's telling Danny why you exist. Hey Danny, this is why you exist, buddy.
Yeah.
And I love that he says, I'm like a flamethrower made out of paper mache. I have all this power, but if I use it all at once, I'll completely destroy myself. And I dig that, because the other thing about those sorts of comics that we've talked about is that, yes, demonic power, hellscape power, holy shit, it is more than a human can really handle or comprehend or deal with. However, there are rules. It isn't limitless. And I appreciate a story like this that establishes pretty clear rules, either through action or through somebody having to school someone. I think this movie does the comic book thing so well. I like when Vassal says, "Everyone's robbing me. It makes my balls hurt."
Yeah.
I mean, who among us cannot? We can all relate.
Yeah, right. Just it's getting a little tight in the old scrote bag. All right, there's no good segue for this, but let's take a moment here to set the table for the audience. Okay, so after the success of 2007's Ghost Rider, the first seeds for the sequel were planted while Cage was doing press for the first film in Europe, dressed completely in black leather. He decided to go to a nearby church, I believe. I don't remember. I don't know if it was Westminster Abbey.
It was.
Something like
It was
that,
Westminster Abbey.
He went to a church. Yeah, and so there's like a congregation of like religious figures from all over the world, and I think there was one American priest that like noticed him in the back, and he said something to him like the church could use a guy like you or something like that. And so, you know, they had begun to sort of spin the idea of this demonic entity working with the church all the way back then. And Avi Arad announced the plans for the sequel. Cage signed on to return, and they wanted like this much darker movie, which they end up getting. And by 2008, Cage revealed discussions about taking Ghost Rider to Europe in a story that was inspired by conspiracy thrillers like Da Vinci Code. Then Columbia Pictures greenlit the sequel with David S. Goyer joining the project. Unlike the first film, though, first film got a $110 million budget, and Spirit of Vengeance was produced for an estimated $57 million. And the filmmakers themselves said they had about 1/3 to 1/2 of the budget of the first film to work with. And so how do you even attempt to do what the first movie does? And the answer is you don't. You change everything and you get this much different story. So Neveldine and Taylor bring this darker, more aggressive style inspired by the comic series Ghost Rider Road to Damnation. And as we mentioned, like Cage really gets into the character, like literally paints his face, wears these blackout contacts, and then customize his own costume with ancient Egyptian artifacts to get into character. He probably took them out of his own closet at home, knowing Nicolas Cage, right? So filming begins in late 2010, primarily in Romania and Turkey, with locations including Sibiu, Bucharest, Hunedoara Castle, the mountains of Transfargasan. I think they filmed outside Dracula's castle, and then they film additional scenes in Turkey's Cappadocia region, which I have not seen on film since You're from the Future, The Hunter from the Future. The film was shot in 2D, but also converted into 3D, which was its own adventure, requiring a creative consultant to help them scale the 3D and dealing with weather issues as well, affecting the 3D shoot. So the film then premieres in the US February 17th, Valentine's weekend movie, I think. 2012, releasing in both 2D and 3D formats. It opens in more than 3,000 theaters and earned $22 million during its opening weekend, debuting at number 3 at the box office behind Safe House. Domestically earns 51.8. International box office ranges between 81 and 97 million. And the film brought in an estimated worldwide total between 132 and 149 million, definitely outperforming its production budget by multiple times over, despite the very, very mixed reception from critics and audiences. The film goes on to hit home media on June 12th, 2012, DVD, Blu-ray 3D, and digital releases featuring behind-the-scenes documentaries, which I watched a handful of, and expanded commentary from the directors. And based on this film's success, talks of a third Ghost Rider movie surfaced very soon after the release of the film, with both the directors and Nick Cage saying that they would be interested. Cage does later say that he was finished with the character, though, and suggested that a female Ghost Rider could lead a future film instead. And then in 2013, year after the home release, the rights to live-action Ghost Rider returned to Marvel Studios. The character then later entered the MCU, kind of, through Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where Gabriel Luna plays the Robbie Reyes version of Ghost Rider. And then there was a planned Hulu spinoff centered on just Robbie Reyes' Ghost Rider, which was announced but then ultimately canceled before moving to production. So as of now, we're still waiting to see who Ghost Rider might be. I know Keanu Reeves has been floated in that role. I'm curious, as a fan of both of the Ghost Rider movies with Cage, is there somebody that, if you wanted to see Johnny Blaze join the big screen MCU, is there someone that you would want to take up the mantle for him? Like, is there something you have in mind?
Oh, let me see this dude's name. What is his name? Gonzalez? Something Gonzalez. He was in 187. He's got a real small part in Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I'm pretty sure he was in Planet Terror. Clifton Collins Jr. So here's what I
Clifton
would.
Collins, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know how old he is at this point, but so I don't know
Probably
if this
50s.
is inappropriate. You say 50s?
I would think so, yeah.
Oh shit. Oh yeah, man.
He's been around for a long time.
Damn, yeah, dude. 55. 55. All right, so here's what we need. All right. We need Robbie Reyes being played by a young, gruff Latin actor who is currently an unknown. We need Clifton Collins as his male role model, who's going to be a very important figure. Nicolas Cage has to also be there as a permanent figure of hell. Johnny Blaze has graduated to some sort of old man Ghost Rider figure where he's there for some very pivotal stuff, not just one scene to encourage the new hero on his way. He needs to be an important, integral part of all this. I know, you said give me one name, and I'm giving you literally everything else.
You give me a whole movie.
Yeah, and I can't, and I don't know who I want my Robbie Reyes to be because I feel like he's got to be young, and I currently do not have a good pull for a young Latin actor that I think would be good for this character.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, Gabriel Luna played also the T-1000 in the latest Terminator, is very good at that as well. So it's like, if he's available and he would want to do it, I wouldn't say no. He's not a huge enough name at this point, I think, to really be like a needle mover necessarily. Maybe the guy who played what's his face? Namor in Wakanda Forever.
Yeah, I was thinking about him as well.
Because it's like they have like some stock, but are not necessarily the person that you're going to spend like $20 million of your budget on either.
Well, plus, if you want to consider stables of actors within, existing series, he's already done a big MCU character. You could just as easily kind of shift him over to this other thing. Freaking Robert Downey Jr.'s opened the floodgates. Nothing matters anymore.
Nope. Yeah, Robert Downey Jr. Have him be Ghost Rider at this point. he takes off the Dr. Doom mask comes off, and it's a flaming skull underneath, and it's really just, it's been Ghost Rider the whole time.
Yeah, the actor we were talking about is Tenoch Huerta.
Yeah.
So yeah, why not? He was great as Namor. So yeah, I don't know. What is the matter with? Oh, there it is. But no, I really, that was something Cage talked about in an interview when they were promoting this at Comic-Con, that he would love to do a third one where the whole thing is basically in hell and Ghost Rider is in hell doing important shit down there. But in the same answer, he said, I know that would be so expensive. There's no way they could really do it. But if we were going to do a third one, that's what I would want to do.
Yeah. I mean, it would be all CG for the most part, or you have to have like the best production design team ever and a lot of, green screen effects as well. I mean, you could do it. It just would not be easy.
In the words of Robert Rodriguez, fire Schmeier, let's light this candle.
Yeah, I mean, shit, just like get a bunch of propane and, create the fire environment. Forget about CG. Don't do any of that. Use real fire. Be really hot on set, but
Be very punk rock
doable,
about it.
doable.
What?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm curious. Did you expect Christopher Lambert to just do more in this movie than he really ended up doing?
Yes, I was like, hey, Christopher Lambert. Oh, okay, bye.
I was just like that too. And did you? Am I screwing things up if I mention this fact about him and his sword training?
No.
He did months of sword training. I've got it here.
For 4 seconds of sword screen time.
Completely ridiculous. 3 months. 3 months of sword training this man did. And I was sitting there when I saw that fact, I literally had this moment of, and I just watched this yesterday. Does he swing a sword in this? I remember the tattoos
Briefly.
all over.
Yeah. I think he like unsheaths a sword and like gets into a defensive posture and then blocks an incoming strike with the sword. And then the sword gets dissolved. And so it's like, yeah, we appreciate all your hard work. Thank you for your service.
Something got cut.
You can go home now.
Something got cut.
Yeah, that's crazy. 3 months of sword training for that is pretty sad. But he's a interesting actor as well. I would have liked him to be in the movie more because of like him being the head of this sort of monastic religion. I wanted more of him just because I like him in general. But they said that he shaved his head and the application of the tattoos and stuff took so long to take on and off that he just went back to the hotel with it on during his time while he was there. So he must have only been there for like a couple of days to film his scenes and get out. But kind of crazy that he's like, I'm not even dealing with this. Don't wash it off. I'll go home. I'm going to lay down. I'll be back tomorrow. Tattoos will still be on my head.
Just do some touch-ups.
So, yeah. I think, selfishly, I would have liked to see more of him and more of that order of monks that are sort of involved in the deception and like some of the essential backstory of like the importance of these characters and his role in the world. But at the end of the day, that's not what this movie is, and that's okay.
Yeah,
but
it's very Lando Calrissian, you know. They get there thinking everything's going to be all right, and then the dude betrays them. It's like, we've been here 5 seconds. You're going to betray us already? It's like, yeah, I don't want to do the makeup application with these fucking tattoos again. I'm betraying you right now.
Right? He's like, oh, you lied to me. God damn it.
At least the wine is good. I love that line where he goes, guns and wine, naughty priests.
Naughty priests, yeah. Let's get into these haikus because we got some ground to cover.
Alrighty. So, I got the curse will soon lift. Protect the boy with dark gifts. Pissing a fire hose.
Oh. I like that.
Thank you.
There's a brief moment during it's the making of Ghost Rider stuff that's connected to the Blu-ray, and there's a brief moment where you see the green screen of Cage doing the pissing fire hose, and he's like in full costume and stuff, and it's ridiculous. But you really get to see like so much more of Nicolas Cage out of the character, and that's a big part of it. So they could have cheaped out and done all of that with CGI modeling, but they were like, when you have like some stunt double doing it and then you give it to the compositor and the animator's doing it 6 months later, he's like, we have Nicolas Cage in our movie. We want Nicolas Cage to be present in the character. And so they did all of that stuff with him, which is very cool.
So much of what he does in this like mask work, this silent film acting where your physicality takes on a much bigger need. He's amazing at it. And it's really fun to watch. just from like an acting and like theater studies standpoint. It's another reason to watch this movie. It's genuinely impressive.
Yeah, the filmmakers and the behind the scenes stuff were talking specifically about Cage's approach, and it's something that, you know, the more you watch his stuff and the more you hear people talk about him, the more this pops up. But they're like, yeah, he's a very cerebral guy, and it's like, of course, like what you see like on the audience end is like these like crazy things, but like when you sit down and talk to him about the methodology and the sort of planning of how the character gets from point A to point B, it's all incredibly well thought out. This isn't like something that he's just doing on a whim to be like weird and crazy, which is kind of like what the internet meme culture had like the label that had put upon him was that like he just is a weirdo doing weird stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, he's weird, but he really puts a lot of thought into all of the decisions that he makes as a character. Like he knows why he's doing the things that he's doing. He knows why he believes that the character would want to do the thing that he wants to do. And so like he's got the justification for it. It's just that most of us don't really like get to see any of that before we just get the Nick Cage that we see on screen. So nice that, you know, they gave him credit for that. But let me get to this haiku here. Johnny is jonesing. The writer's frenzy unleashed. The boy, his justice. And I like that the filmmakers talk about this sort of being an allegory for like addiction, which I see to some degree, of course. But it's like it is like this affliction, and like you can tell that like while he is pained by his role as the ghostwriter and like what he has to do, he also kind of like wants to let him out. You know, he's like working very, very hard to be like, no, I don't need this. I don't like this. I don't want this to be a part of my life and I want this removed. But then like when you see it happening, like he does sort of display a lot of the behaviors of an addict.
Yeah.
And he wants to like enjoy that part of the addiction that he enjoys. And so I like that it was framed that way. It was a very different take on it.
And it's something that I think we see in more modern takes on werewolf movies too. This admission from the person suffering the affliction that it feels good. It does feel good to wolf out. It does feel good to just completely cut loose. And I feel guilty about it, right? Because I know it creates all this damage and all this harm, not unlike a person who goes on a bender. Even as a young person who was very interested in addiction and substance abuse as topics because they were so prevalent in the world I was growing up in, it was a relief to me to see a movie like Trainspotting where they make it a point to go, well, yeah, heroin felt fucking good. It felt better than any orgasm you ever had. I mean, why else would we fucking do it? We're not that stupid. And it was like, that's not the point. The point isn't whether it feels good or not. The point is all these other things that are wrapped up in it. But if you don't come forward with that dirty honesty, you lose credibility from your audience, no matter what your message is. And so it all kind of fits together for me, especially in as much as, you know, the ghostwriter curse is kind of similar to a werewolf thing.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And I think the one thing that this movie does in a way that the other one doesn't handle, with like the specific sort of like internal monster, is the way that it interprets what you see in Cage's face. There's a scene actually in the film that was one of the deleted scenes where he actually is in a church and he's wearing a hood and he's sitting in the back, and all of a sudden it's like the more he's there, like he starts like smoking and stuff, and so it's like he goes outside and the hood comes down, you sort of like see the ghostwriter skull under his face, and And I was like, that's a cool scene. I would have liked to see that, because I think it shows that Johnny is like seeking redemption. He's looking for answers, where it's like him just hiding in this like dilapidated factory setting. He's running away, but it doesn't seem like he's as invested in like trying to solve it. But like, I understand the constraints of the movie sort of getting us to where we were. But when we look at scenes like where he's holding the guy up against the wall, and it's the whole like, the writer's in here, man, and he really wants to get out, and I'm gonna let him out. And you see these moments where it's like all of a sudden like his eyes go black, right? Um, and like, or you see like his mouth, you see like his face changing. I was sort of grappling with like, is this what the people in the world are experiencing with him? Like, if I'm the other people in the scene, am I seeing his like eyes like all of a sudden disappear into these like sunken dark sockets? Or is this the sort of like communication for me as the audience member, that like this is like the internal struggle that's happening? Because we can watch Cage be weird Nick Cage plenty, like he's done that, but if we don't maybe overlay some of these effects onto him, it will sort of trap the performance into some of those performances that get labeled as like the eccentric weirdo Cage. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. I took it literally myself, in the same way that sometimes in a vampire movie, if a vamp is trying to wait for just the right moment, but then somebody cuts themselves, their teeth pop out and they have to go, oh shit, and they try to pull them back in again. I honestly sort of saw it that way, because he's trying to keep it at bay and hold it back. So that is honestly how I saw it, and I think that fuels the fear from the person that he's caging out on, because it's like, what the fuck just happened to that guy's face? And also, it went back again. Did I really see that? So yeah, I sort of took that at face value.
I felt like that decision was kind of like scarier. Like, if I saw Ghost Rider, of course I would be freaked out. But like, if you're talking to me and your face is like morphing in and out of Ghost Rider while we're chatting, like, I don't know, that's kind of like scarier in its own way. That it's not consistent either. And like, you see a little bit more of it when they do sort of like the montage of him on the bike, and he's like laughing and screaming, like with the green screen background and zooming around the city. You can kind of see like different versions of the skull like popping through for moments where it's like, oh, this quarter of his face, or like his jaw, so I think there is something to be said for the utilization of that technique in the portrayal of Ghost Rider, because it does seem like this thing that is a lot less contained. And like in the first one, it was sort of like, oh, there's not necessarily a full moon, but when the trouble is near, right, Ghost Rider shows up. And in this, it's like, no, Ghost Rider, he either lives in a world where there's just trouble constantly around, and he wants to Ghost Rider people. He's here to collect some souls, and Johnny's just having a really tough time keeping him at bay. Or it is like this just addiction that is like so out of control that it's like it's right there bubbling at the surface all the time, and it's just very hard for him to get a grasp on. And so I like the utilization of that technique, because it does, like, it is a very sort of day and night sort of difference in sort of like, if you were to separate it into werewolf mythology of like, oh, is the werewolf conditional based upon like only full moon behavior, or is this more like, oh no, this is a disease rather than a curse kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I like the idea that it's slowly taking over, and that's part of what it is. It comes out more. It makes more of the decisions for him. Not unlike Brain Damage, which is a great flick from the 80s and is also a huge allegory for addiction. But it starts out maybe like the first movie, where it feels like he's got a bit of a handle on it. He's a little bit like Peter Parker on a motorcycle, and he uses it for good, and he has a little grown-up mentor. But now we're almost a decade later, and this thing hasn't just never left. It has not bent to his will. It is slowly taking over, and he knows it, and he doesn't know how to stop it. And that's how we drop in on on our new Johnny Blaze. And yeah, it's part of what works for me.
Well, let's take a look at the trailer here.
But first, a quick message from our resident superhero show on the network.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I am Nick Scheist, and you may remember me from the Scheist Podcast and Bad Movies We Love.
And I'm Seth Vargas of the Movie Friends Podcast.
And we decided to join forces, a team up, if you will, because X-Men 97 was so good, we just couldn't help ourselves.
That's right. So join us as we discuss our personal history with the comics, the films, and the collectible trading cards of the X-Men universe.
And, of course, the catalyst for it all, X-Men 97. To me, my ex-friends.
Kind of romantic music.
Yeah, I'm excited for the rug pull.
No conscience. Just hunger. The rider's going to come out. And when he does, he'll destroy whoever's got it coming. He'll take on a new form. One more powerful than he's ever known.
I mean, these are all the money shots.
Yeah. Without knowing, you wouldn't be like, oh, you gave away some of like the biggest pieces of the movie.
Yeah, that's neat, actually, right? It was done in such a way that they could tease it in the trailer, but you don't know what you're being teased about.
What if you have to pee while you're on fire?
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's a really
there at the end.
fuck yeah, they did. That's a reason to see the movie. I do dig that trailer, honestly, because that's a really good sort of mission statement about what you're going to see. And without giving the middle finger to the first one, it's saying very decisively, hey, we're not doing that again. We're doing something totally different.
Yeah. We are not that movie.
We're not your dad.
We enjoyed that movie.
Ghost Rider. I mean, it was cool. We're not your older brother's Ghost Rider, which was cool. We liked it too. But we're not that.
Yeah, we liked it, but we're not doing that. Yeah, it's a good trailer. I think, honestly, I liked the movie more this time than initially. Like, I feel like it was so disconnected from the first one, it sort of soured me on my first experience watching it. But getting a chance to rewatch it, I think there's a lot more good to take away, and a lot of the specific decisions of the character design, both physically and sort of metaphorically with what Cage is doing, I really like a lot. And having, I think, also maybe like sharpened my sword on Nick Cage performances and his career, I feel like it's a much, much, much better Nick Cage movie than the first Ghost Rider, which is like, the first one is sort of like, hey, remember like The Rock and Con Air and like you being a movie star? Like, let's kind of do that, except for you're going to be Ghost Rider. And then this one has that like almost a decade in between where it's like, hey, forget all that shit of you being a movie star. Let's get back to you being an actor. And like even him talking about like wanting to don the suit and do the stuff in order to give the rest of his cast like that thing to work with is like, yeah, that's a very sort of like mature approach to tackling this kind of like weird, dark, spiritual stuff that they're doing.
And I feel like, oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, go for it. No, go.
Well, I feel like we've, kind of referenced the idea or nudged toward this, but I really do want to hit how incredible the look of Ghost Rider in this movie is when you compare it to the first one. The black skull, the flames, the fact that it's Nick Cage actually doing all of the mocap, it looks so good. And every moment of him on screen, whether it's on a bike or walking or using the chain or what have you, it just looks so much better. And it, comes back to that comic book artistry that I think the movie gets right, and that punk rock energy that's taking us through this whole thing.
I feel like his suit design is a little like it's more gooey. Like it looks like it's charred, right? The skull is black this time instead of like the glossy white. Because it's like, yes, the skull is being burnt constantly. So we get all of that. And like the overall just like color palette of the movie is a lot darker for the most part. It's also a lot more like monochromatic in that it's just a significantly less colorful film. And
I'm not saying
the settings that it's shot in also do that.
I'm not saying this is why they did it, but when you do that with the color, fire really pops a lot more. It's a very Mad Max effect.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I think is a real positive as a result. I don't know if that's why they did it that way, but I also just really want to commend them for the way they utilize that whole darkness, full CG environment thing for some of those kills from the Ray Kerrigan, blackout character, because that's such, in my opinion, a smart comic book way to save some money, but not skimp on the imagery. Like for a PG-13 movie, these kills are brutal.
No, I agree. I feel like that Shadow Realm attack is a very clever way to get around some of the stuff that they were doing. But like you said, it feels at home, like on the page of a comic panel, right? And I think that's what is actually important to the approach to it. Because I think when you're reading a comic book, like when you're reading a book, like, you have an illustrator, you have a writer, you have an inker, you have a bunch of different people sort of like building this visual look for the thing. And the panel is going to give you the template for what the world looks like. And then like, as you're cutting from panel to panel, like, yes, it is drawn and you see a lot of the background world, but it's like your brain sort of still has to fill in the connective tissue there for some of that stuff. And so to do that sort of like Shadow Realm attack in the way that it's done here, I feel like gives back to the audience in that same way of like your imagination is an essential part of experiencing this. Whereas when you look at like the first Ghost Rider, it's like, how do we take all of this imagination and like capture it on film in the best way that we can versus like leaving something to the imagination. And so it's like when there's there's always the thing going on in the film community of like, oh, the movie's not as good as the book, right? Well, that happens a lot, but at the same time, I'm sort of the person of like, if they both exist, I'll tend to watch the movie first, and then if I like the movie and the story and the ideas, and I want more of and like an expansion on that, then I will go ahead and read the book because I want more of those particular details. But the job of the movie is to trim out all of those details and like trim out the imagination part of the book and give you something that is like tangible visually, which like a book is not. So in that same way, I feel like this movie and a couple other comic book movies like still sort of give back in a way that like helps lend itself to the way that your imagination should kind of fill in the blanks on some of the stuff when you're reading a comic book.
Yeah, I think it's important always to understand when you're doing a film adaptation of a comic that, yeah, this is a really specific medium, comic book movie, but film is a different medium from comic books. And so it shouldn't just be a one-to-one translation. You're doing your audience and yourself a disservice. Some of the best film adaptations, Speed Racer, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, these aren't, they aren't trying to be one-to-one. They're massaging and adjusting where they can. Now, I'm just curious, were you speaking in general about adaptation, or were you talking specifically about the comic Ghost Rider Road to Damnation?
No, not about that specific comic in general. I didn't read that comic. I was reading more recent Ghost Rider stuff, and I had read some of like the previous era Johnny Blaze stuff when I was a kid. But um, I was speaking more broadly to like the job of what an adaptation is trying to achieve when bringing it to screen is kind of to like pare away the stuff that is, because it's like, all right, I'm reading the book and then I'm going to adapt it into a screenplay, so you already have somebody sort of being the filter between what the book is doing and then how it's interpreted and then what the movie should look like based on that. And so like you're kind of already giving over that level of imagination to some degree to the person who's writing the screenplay. And it's like that's part of the process of the adaptation. So I like to go in reverse, where it's like if I want more of the world, then I watch the movie first and then I will read the book after, versus reading the book first and then going into the movie and being like, oh, well, it didn't have like A, B, and C in it from the book that I loved, right? So it's like I feel like that kind of like just sets those movies up to fail a lot of the time. And it's like it's not necessarily a fair comparison, but I feel like one of the key components in the movie, like we talked about with like sort of the animation, right? We see the animation and we see what the story is telling us, but our brain still has to sort of fuse the real world that we've been given with those animated sequences that we're seeing. And it's like there's still a little bit of room for the human imagination to like watch the two halves. And I think it is a little bit disjointing for people when they see like animation all of a sudden in the middle of a live action movie. Sometimes that's like a very big off-putting thing for people. And I think it's probably one of the things that actually caused like this movie to probably have the sort of bad reputation that it did. But I feel like giving me both of those things and just like trusting me as the audience member to like be able to meld them and understand they are both two parts of the same like story that I'm getting. I think that is investment in the audience that a lot of movies I think are maybe a little bit afraid to take sometimes.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that there's a lot of trust being given to the audience in movies like this, where you have these big stylistic swings, because the filmmakers are taking you on a ride, and sometimes there's twists and turns. And if they're too heavily signposted, they don't have any punch. They have no effect, and so they trust us to either get it or get it before it's too late. You know, as viewers on a first watch, we're allowed to catch up. That's another thing. You know, you don't always have to get everything immediately on a first watch. And, and sometimes you get it a little, a few minutes later, and then you get it much earlier the second time you watch the movie. So it's, in my opinion, it can be alienating for some folks because that is that MCU corporate mindset. Disney dollars states you don't want to alienate any audience. You want to make sure no one is ever confused at all, no matter what, especially considering they're probably looking at their phones half the time. Let's make sure we write the scripts in such a way to grab people who are probably just looking at their phones and not even watching the movie. Like that's the mindset that dictates, hey, we need to hold their hand and make sure they're not confused. Again, these guys are punk rock. They're playing and they're playing hard, and they trust you to get it, or at least they trust you to get it enough to jam with them.
Yeah, and they had mentioned too that they actually wanted Nick Cage to play was it Chet Chelios is the crank character Jason Statham
Oh,
plays?
really? I didn't know that.
I think so. Yeah, they said that like Cage was just so far beyond the realm of their grasp at the time that they were making the movies that like it wasn't even an ask that was realistic. But like so being able to revisit that and sort of like give this version of Johnny Blaze some of those sort of like crank like moments, like where he's like fishing for meds in the hospital or like very oddly flirting with the nurse, behaving insanely weird in the bed with her, all that stuff I think like makes a lot more sense. And I think it's an interesting movie in the sense that so many people probably saw it, didn't like it, forgot it, and moved on. Whereas looking back at it and like learning more about it and hearing Cage talk about it, hearing the filmmakers talk about it, hearing about the production, like I think all that stuff actually really enriches what the movie is as a final product a lot more than the final product in a vacuum would suggest. But because I mentioned the sort of maybe the line in the sand when it comes to too much animated stuff being in a live action movie is one of the things that maybe sort of gets in the way. What do you think is sort of like the general consensus on why this movie's bad?
I think, like we've been saying, it takes big swings. It is a big departure from the tone and the style of the first one, and it makes no apologies about that. And it doesn't lay groundwork for people to be okay with it. They drop in very quickly and abruptly saying, no, this is who we are and what we're doing. Let's go. I think that could be alienating to mainstream audiences. I think there's a quirkiness and a kind of grossness to a lot of the proceedings that is off-putting to a more mainstream audience because, again, it's not what they were expecting. And having a kid mixed up in all of this and not, I was going to say not softening, but yeah, I guess not softening the demonic death and dismemberment that goes with such a journey. And I think it was all just a lot scrappier, dirtier, faster, and more quirky and oddball than people going to see Ghost Rider 2 in 2012 were expecting. And so I think it hit with people who liked it, but I think that number was fairly small.
Yeah, I mean, bigger probably than most people would have thought. Like the movie did make 3 times its budget. It was successful. And they did it on half the budget too. So I think this movie being sort of categorized as a failure, I think is a mistake. And I think a lot of movies that end up with the reputation of being like bad movies are movies that get the label of sort of being a failure even before the movie like really has a chance to have legs. So I will be curious to see like if over time this supplants the original as like the preferred of the 2 Ghost Rider movies, because you like this one better. We know somebody else who likes this one better. And I think the more people that come around on like Cage as an actor and not just a star might actually begin to prefer this one more and more. But we'll cross that bridge in another 10 years. So let's do some trivia first, though.
All right.
Time for trivia.
Okay, so question number 1. This was the second movie to be released under the Marvel Knights banner. What was the other one?
Jonah Hex.
Oh, that's not the one that I have. Maybe it was, but Punisher Warzone is the one that was listed.
That's entirely possible.
You might be right.
I don't remember what year that came out, so that was just a guess.
That's 2010, so a year before this one.
Oh, I'm so silly. That's DC. Oh, my goodness. They're going to come for me. I was just so excited to talk about Josh Brolin and Jonah Hex with Megan Fox and Will Arnett.
Another movie that I would say, I would say that movie is fairly squarely in the category of bad movie.
I don't know.
Might have to revisit Jonah Hex in the future with you.
Oh my goodness, it might have to happen. Oh goodness, there's a movie. There's a movie for you.
Okay. So this film, Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance, was nominated for 2 Golden Raspberry Awards, but didn't win either. Do you know what 2 awards it was nominated for?
Worst lead actor, Nicolas Cage.
Yes, that is
worst,
correct, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, right. And then worst like remake, reboot, sequel. Like it's kind of an umbrella category.
Yes, it is worst prequel, remake, or ripoff. So it was nominated, but didn't win either. But again, like, see, it goes back to this notion that like what Nick Cage is doing in this movie was like bad, like considered to be bad acting, and it's like, I don't know. I would say if you look at the first Ghost Rider, like comparatively, like that is just kind of a very like dialed in studio kind of performance from Cage, where he gets to have like a little bit of fun and you see a little bit of his personality, but in terms of like what acting, like, I mean, maybe I don't want to say should, but can be. I feel like Nick Cage putting in black contacts and face paint and wearing a LED headset to like portray the physical side of the Ghost Rider character is undeniably a jump in the acting capacity for the Ghost Rider franchise. So it's weird that, you know, stuff like that gets pigeonholed into sort of just categorically being bad. But we'll move on to the third and final question.
Yeah. Well, I feel like as time goes on, we're going to look back at this era of Hollywood, and I do mean the 20 teens up into now, and we're going to start to see that there was a shift in the legitimacy of the establishment critics, and that their legitimacy is falling, and the greater divide between them and the audience and what the audience likes and wants to see, and that we're going to kind of revisit this historically and sort of say, no, there was a huge shift during this era where, you know, the Hollywood execs and the establishment critics were completely out of step with what the movie lovers actually wanted and were actually thinking. And you can see it, you know, with these bad reviews for these movies that are actually awesome.
Yeah. And like, I think there is a place for film critics and like legitimate film criticism. Granted, like we kind of exist in a place where like that's few and far between these days. But as a critic, you're getting to go see the movie as part of your job. You're having the movie sent to you to review, right? This is not, you're not out of pocket to go see the movie. But if you're someone who is taking the time out of your day to commute, to, you know, find parking, to get to the damn movie, to buy a ticket, to maybe buy concessions, to like go see a movie, and you enjoy it, like, I don't know, there's more on the line for the audience than there is for the critics. And so I know that like historically sort of audience perception has been like, more generally speaking, audiences are probably like more forgiving on movies. Like even in a movie like this, right? We saw that the critic score was at 18% and the audience score was at 31%. So there is still like a definite difference overall between like the audience and the critics. But like there is something to be said for the audience experience, and maybe not everybody in the audience is capable of like articulating their thoughts about a film or about like an art criticism in the way that like someone who is a professional does. But yeah, there's more on the line to have to go spend money and time to go see it, and to potentially go see it again and enjoy it, and then suggest somebody else go see it, because like word of mouth is still a very good motivator. Like if your friend tells you like, oh, I saw like Ghost Rider 2 and like it does all of these things like well in the way that this first movie didn't, is very different than sort of saying go see Ghost Rider 2, it's awesome, right? Like there's layers and there's levels to the explanation of why things work and why they don't work. And I think there should probably, obviously the studios are like, we want the audience's money, right? So our job is to get them to pay money to see the movie. So we have to make a product that is good enough for them to pay for. Whereas with critics, that isn't the case. Like you obviously want good reviews and you want the critics on your side, but at the end of the day, if a critic, you know, doesn't like your movie but it succeeds, then it's kind of like, well, what was the value of their criticism if it like didn't actually affect our overall sort of box office, and it doesn't change the way that we're going to like approach filmmaking? It does sort of like put the critic in a weird position now, where a lot of that stock, like you know, we all grew up with Ebert and Roper, or Siskel and Ebert at some point. So it's like we all sort of know the value of like a well-established critic in a position of sort of like media legitimacy, being able to influence taste, right? We all know that. But as much as I agree with them a lot of the time on what he says, and then there's a lot of times I'm super surprised when he gives a movie a good rating. There was a streak on this show where it was like Ebert was the top scorer on the board for like 5 or 6 movies in a row. I was like, what is going on? Like, does Ebert have shitty taste too? Or do I have good taste? I'm like, so it, like, you know, there is a lot of that imbalance, but it is kind of interesting to see that like this decade, maybe from the 2010s to the 2020s, has sort of shifted the polarity, with the advent of Rotten Tomatoes being a lot more popular than it probably was. Like, I don't even know when it first sort of like hit its mark, but it's used very heavily in advertising now, where it's like this movie is certified fresh with a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes kind of thing. And it's not a apples to apples comparison, because 97% isn't a 97 out of 100 grade. Even on their own metric, it's 97% of critics gave it a pass on a pass fail scale. So like it's a little weird, but it's a changing time, and I am interested to see if that goes away, because there is a self-seriousness with some critics that is very off-putting. And it's like, we want you to listen to our advice in a way that comes from a place of like talking down to you. And I don't feel that that's like actually helpful. Like in the long run, I don't think it's helpful to the movie. I don't think it's helpful to the audience. I don't think it's helpful to the critics either. So I would like to see more of like maybe a more nuanced take, but that may be asking a little bit too much from the world that we currently live in, where everything has become incredibly hyperbolic.
Yeah, because that's what sells, right? And that's what sells, the lowest common denominator, the most hyperbolic. And I think with, those sort of establishment critics, they have, as you were saying, less to lose. And it is just a job for them. They're not invested in the film's success the way a viewer is. A viewer wants a movie to be good. As you said, they put a lot of time and money into just being there. So they want it to be good. And if they enjoy themselves, they're going to tell other people to check that out. Hey, you should go and have that same vibe I had. It was a great time. With a lot of the establishment critics, and they're kind of, losing, I think, their legitimacy. I think there's an austerity to what they are accustomed to and what they expect from their dynamic with their readers and with their the viewers and with the filmmakers and studios, because they're a part of the machine. Whether they have a good or a bad opinion about a movie, there is a label of legitimacy put on any film they choose to review. Just by talking about it at all, that says, well, it was worth Ebert's time to at least look at it and talk about it and write about it. That says something about the movie right there. And it's like, without, whether they're trying to or not, they're pushing people toward the movies that they've deemed as legitimate. And, this for once is not me legitimate, like specifically wagging my finger at Siskel and Ebert, which me, I love to do. But it's the system, it's the system that enabled that, because it became about these personalities. And what's interesting now with the new dynamic, because Rotten Tomatoes, I think, is one of the worst things ever, because it allows it to be so lazy. People go 97%, and it's like, well, no, 97% of critics said it was 51%. Like, that's all you can really say. The other score is 49%. Those are the only options. How do you like them apples? It's tomatoes. Shut the fuck up. So what I do like, though, is that how many content creators there are, and the ability to just, like public access TV, but on crack, you can just get your shit out there. And if people like it, they'll share it around. And that's the new word of mouth. And so unless, of course, you're one of these fuckwads who, like, is a creator that gets money from the studio to back whatever they want to back as part of their marketing. Like, if you're just like you and me, like legitimately just people that talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and people pass that around and start to dig what you have to say and value your opinion, then on a really, really, really small scale, that's become the new word of mouth, because this is just one person's opinion who cares enough about it to create something that they can put out there and share it with people. And so it's interesting to me the ways in which, with all this technology that takes the human away from the artistry and even away from the viewership and the way from the commentary, I've become more positive. I've become more optimistic about the future, because what I'm starting to see, at least on a lot of different examples, are people finding a way to use the technology to then take the power back, or I'll go with that, to then take the power back for themselves, just through new means of sort of reshaping the technology that was used to fracture us in the first place. I don't know. There could be something really interesting happening. Or, it's not even 2:00 and I've just had too many of these. It's Ghost Rider, dude. It's Ghost Rider Sunday.
Ghost Rider Sunday. I like that. I mean, yeah, like I'm at a position where, I wrote movie reviews for like 5 years before sort of switching to maybe like full-time attention to the podcast and not so much writing. Because writing is a lot more time consuming. Honestly, I don't even know if it is anymore. The amount of time I spend podcasting is probably it's far surpassed the amount of time it takes to write like a single article at this point. But um, this taking the power back thing, I feel, is kind of an interesting notion because there is like the studios have also included like paying what are they called, influencers, paying influencers to sort of be on their site, people with big followings, like come see our movie, talk about it, promote it. Like they found a way to sort of circumvent the critics having less pull than they used to. But realistically, like I don't even read movie reviews unless it's for this show, or unless I'm like really a sadist and I'm like, hey, I like this movie that everybody's hating, let me read something that is the opposite opinion of what I had to figure out like why people are hating it. Like I really have to be in sort of a morbid curiosity mood for that, because there's I don't know, I wouldn't even know where to look for that kind of stuff anymore. I don't have like those trusted sources that I would pick out, and like it's been replaced by like podcasting, right? Because then I can sort of listen to that conversation passively and absorb it in a way that I think is a little bit more holistic than sort of, reading somebody's teardown piece, which is fairly common when we do stuff like Critics Corner on the show. Like I see the way that they've chosen to write their little pull quotes here, and I'm like, this is such a sort of like passive aggressive approach to like how you're talking about the film. You're not really like giving an articulated criticism. You're like, Ghost Rider burns rubber, blah blah, like it's some stupid shit like that. And I'm sure we'll see several of those when we get to Critics Corner. But first, we've got to finish trivia. I've got one more question on the board for you. Question number 3 was, there is a little bit of a animated montage here of people that the devil walked the earth in their body. So who were the previous incarnations of the devil that are shown in the montage?
Jerry Springer.
Yeah. I said, damn, Jerry catching strays here at the
end. It's very of its time to just make a gag on Jerry fucking Springer. It's like, yeah, why not? Why the fuck not? That's the one I remember for sure. Beyond that, I'm going to be guessing it would be, I don't know, Hitler, Stalin. Stalin was definitely one of them.
Stalin was one of them.
Genghis Khan, maybe?
They have it listed as Vlad the Impaler.
Oh shit! I can't believe I didn't grab for that one. That's such an obvious pull. All right, who else? Because yeah, that's all I got.
And then the other one is a little amorphous, but it is a clown that is potentially John Wayne Gacy.
Oh, okay, fun.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, not for the victims.
Right. Not for the victims. We talked about a lot of the trivia just like naturally throughout the course of the conversation. And I found it interesting that this is the last movie that Mark Neveldine and Brian Taylor made together. And this was 15 years ago now. It was kind of sad that they didn't continue to work together after this. This shoot, though, like I mentioned it earlier, was very difficult. And one of the main reasons for that was equipment. So when they decided to film in Europe, there were 2 other like big productions going on in Europe at the time. And they're like 2 or 3. And so they said like we ran into this perfect storm of like all the equipment in Europe was rented out. And then the studio houses in New York were rented out. And so they were like, we're weeks away from shooting and we don't have our equipment contracts secured. So we have like no cameras, no lighting, no nothing. And so they were grabbing lighting from like Italy, and then they had some stuff driven in from Germany, and they still needed cameras. And so the producer, Manu Gargi, he said, like, let me take a shot. I know some people in Mumbai. Picks up the phone. He calls them. He's like, hey, I need, A to Z equipment. He's like, yeah, we got all that. He's like, there's no way you have all this equipment. Says, yeah, no, I'm telling you, we have it all. And he's like, I don't believe you. I'm getting on a plane tonight. I'll be flying out there. And so he gets there and he's like, yeah, they basically had everything that we needed. So I went out there with the checklist, went over everything, signed the contracts, and then they shipped everything from India to them. And so he's flying back 3 days prior. And they still don't have cameras like 3 days prior to principal photography. So all the stuff is like coming in at the last minute. But it was kind of crazy that like they were able to like even pull this off at all, because like they had the locations, they had the cast, they had the crew, but they just didn't have equipment. And so like they were very close to not being able to like even start shooting the film when they were supposed to. So like when you fold that in with like all of the other stuff that's going on in this movie, like this movie's kind of a miracle in that sense. And I hope it gets the kind of sort of reappraisal that it deserves as we trickle down the line. Because, 5 years from now, 20th anniversary, maybe we're looking at a little bit of reappraisal. But I think like when I'm looking back at Nick Cage's career, like this is a very interesting performance from him. And I don't know that I would say it's like at like the tippity top, because if I'm looking like at quality, I would say it's probably a little bit below what I would put in like the upper echelon of like his quality performances. But if I'm looking at the most intriguing and interesting sort of like experimental work he's done, I would say it's up there in terms of like stuff that you should watch if you're a Nick Cage fan trying to like understand his body of work. I think this is a good one to actually include on that list.
Yeah, I'd completely agree. It's just that, the top echelon of his performances are some of the best things in cinema over the last 30 to 40 years. So it's like, what are you going to do? This is outstanding, but yeah, it wouldn't be in contention for even the top 5, but it's outstanding. That's so exciting to me to hear that using that huge construction vehicle, the bugger, was something they had to shift to and they couldn't get a wrecking ball. Because did you check the stats on this thing? This thing is insane.
I didn't, but I trusted that it's as enormous as it looks.
Yeah, this was the heaviest land vehicle until 1995, when in the entire world, after it got created in Germany in 1978. Fucking thing is 720 feet long, 150 feet wide, 300 feet tall. It weighs 13,500 tons. And the whole sequence took 4 months to shoot. And it looks fucking wild. Awesome.
It does. It's really like the pinnacle, I think, of the visual effects that the movie achieves. And so I'm glad they didn't show too much of that in the trailer, because it is, I mean, it's just impeccably shown in that sequence. But yeah, as I was watching it, I was like, this is like what the Constructicons in like the Decepticons, like when they formed Devastator, it's like he's this thing right here.
And it's neat too, the way the movie does a lot of sequel stuff without shaking their hands and going, look, we're doing the sequel thing. He doesn't just make a Hellfire motorcycle, he makes a Hellfire giant construction vehicle, and then later a Hellfire fucking truck. But it's all wrapped up in what is happening in the story and with the characters, and how we're moving to the next bit of the adventure. Man, I don't know. Even talking about this movie makes me like it even more.
Yeah, no, it's a good time, and I think definitely like maybe more so fans of Nick Cage should check it out versus like fans of the first Ghost Rider movie. I would say like that might be sort of a kind of like distinction, because if you love Nick Cage being eccentric and weird and doing acting stuff, then like this movie is much more your cup of tea than the first Ghost Rider movie would be. But I mean, generally, if you like the Ghost Rider character, this is a fun one too. And it's just very different than the first one. But like, what do you want? You want the first movie all over again? Like, what's the point of that? Just watch the first one, and then if you want something completely tonally different, go to the sequel. All right, well let's open up that bonus wheel and see what you get, because you got 4 points off of trivia there. So we'll spin the bonus wheel for the first one, and we'll see what question you get. Okay. So, if you had to pitch a sequel for this movie right now, what is your absurd elevator pitch for Ghost Rider 3?
I mean, I already did it earlier in the episode, didn't I?
You did. You did, yeah. So rewind the episode, listen to that.
Go to this time code. No, like exactly that. Yeah, Nick Cage, Johnny Blaze is in a managerial position in hell, and he's managing stuff, and he is needed for the adventure of our Robbie Reyes character, who is maybe played by the guy who played Namor, or maybe somebody else. And he has Clifton Collins Jr. as like his awesome uncle character. And who knows, maybe for no reason at all, he's Danny Ketch. It's a movie. We can do whatever we want. And he's learning to do the Ghost Rider shtick, but we spend a lot of it on a sort of Dante's Inferno-esque journey in hell with Johnny Blaze, Nicolas Cage as our guide. So he's going to be, I don't know, Virgil or whatever.
He's the caretaker this time around.
Yeah, you know, his Sam Elliott's, you know, he has a picture of Sam Elliott in his burning wallet all the time.
Well, yeah, Nick Cage did enter his like wanting to have a mustache era as well when he did The Old Way. So slap a ridiculous mustache on him in hell. He's got a fire mustache because he's Ghost Rider.
Exactly.
Okay. So what is an item? What is an item, object, or piece of technology from the film that you'd want for yourself?
I guess the fire chain would be pretty cool. I mean, there's so many people I'd love to just immediately set on fire and they just, you know, turn to ash. I mean, I'd only use it for good, I promise.
This will be operated responsibly.
Yeah, I'll sign a contract. It'll be a deal.
Yeah. That's fine. I mean, if I could ride a motorcycle, I'd say probably the motorcycle, but I do like his bike better in the first movie, so maybe not the motorcycle from this one. Okay. This is a fun one. You're a theater kid. If you could insert a surprise musical number into this film, which scene are you choosing to turn into that musical number?
Okay. I'm only choosing this because it's my knee-jerk reaction. When they arrive at the sanctuary that's supposed to be like the place where they can ride this out, they're greeted by all of the monks doing a huge, hey, welcome musical number, kind of like in Annie. When she's like, I think I'm gonna like it here. It's basically that. But Ghost Rider-ified.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, Ghost Rider can't really like sing when he's in Ghost Rider form, but
he can do the, you know, our services are excellent. You couldn't ask for more. Like, you know, he can do that Rex Harrison thing where he speaks kind of on the beat. Nick Cage would be so good at that.
I would like to see him experiment with the musical, because you know he sang, but it's been a long time. Was that Peggy Sue Got Married? It's been so long.
Too long. See, and that's the other thing too. I keep coming back to this notion of him as in a third Ghost Rider movie because he's doing that spider noir thing. Like, fuck, anything's possible. Anything's possible at this point.
I agree. Anything is possible. Okay, last question off the board. You need to come up with an acronym for this movie. It's a new question I sprung on you.
Graph.
You're always the first one through the wall on these new questions. Yeah. Graph.
Ghost Rider as fuck.
Ghost. Okay, I like that.
Again, knee jerk. We're going with the
Even
knee jerk.
more Ghost Rider than before.
Exactly, it really is.
That's
I mean,
fine.
you know,
that's all I want.
like I said before, the other one was a comic book movie. This is a comic book movie.
Definitely. Okay. I like that. Let's go to more or less. You tell me one thing that you want more of from the film and one thing that you want less of.
Oh, easy. I wanted more Rourke, because I really do like the actor, and I think if they had given us a little bit more of his stuff with the kid, we could have maybe built an interesting bond between the two of them, and like just complicated his character a bit more, maybe humanized him a bit more. You know, we see some of the charm. Like, why do people fall under his spell? Maybe Danny doesn't totally fall under his wing, but starts to have father-son moments with him. I think that could have been interesting, and then less of that French accent.
Fair enough. I like that. Okay. I think yes. Either I need more Rourke or less. And if he's going to be the primary villain, give me enough to where it's him and mostly him versus like sort of inserting him at the midway point and then like, okay, now you're taking over as the primary villain kind of story. A little bit disjointed there, but yeah, I could go for either more or less depending on how the rest of the stuff shakes out around him. Okay, so was there anything else that you like really wanted to specifically mention before
Honestly,
we head over to Critics Corner?
To give you a more real answer, I think I could have done with less Ray Kerrigan in human form. I think we could have done the switch over to Blackout earlier and then had less of him throughout the film, and that would justify more Rourke. So I think that really could have been done. Although I like the actor a lot and I enjoy the character, but I thought all the stuff with Blackout was so cool. The way he could, you know, the bit with the Twinkie where he's touching all the food and it's just disintegrating in his hand, and then he gets to a Twinkie and he's able to eat it.
Yeah, that was the last scene that they filmed for the movie, was that scene with the Twinkie.
Tight.
And I think the thing with Johnny Whitworth's performance is that he's almost geared to be what we see from Blackout, even when he's human. So then, like, when he's Blackout, we get, I think, all of, like, the fun stuff comes through with his character, where it's like when he's a person, he seems, like, kind of overly animated for, like, a regular human. And then when he becomes Blackout, it's like, oh, this is, like, exactly what it should be. And, like, they did a lot of, like, makeup and prosthetics for him as well. He's a cool villain, especially given, like, what we saw in the first movie. And maybe that's why they shied away from it, because it was, like, there was too many of those monster type dudes in the first one.
Well, visually, I think this one has aged.
Still cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
This one,
well,
I think visually has aged a lot better because of all of the practical work they did.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's ring the bell and head over to Critics Corner. All right, we have a 34 overall on the board. And we start at the bottom, as we always do. The elusive 0 is on the board to start us off. Speaking of critics and horrible things to say, Rolling Stone, it's Peter Travers, says, one look at the dreadful mess that is Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance will turn your whisper into a primal cage scream. Make this movie stop.
Make this movie stop. Oh, the torture that was inflicted upon him. People are allergic to fun. That was the other thing I was going to mention, is that along with the legitimacy of establishment critics sort of faltering, the Razzies as something that deserves any attention whatsoever, I think also. Like, I think the viewers, the movie viewers' relationship to the Razzies as an institution, such as it is, has really changed over the last decade.
For the better or for the worse?
I think more and more people are like, well, yeah, fuck the Razzies. They hate everything. Who gives a shit what they think? They're punching down. I think more and more people see them as an institution that exists to punch down. And I think more viewers are getting tired of that kind of shit.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, I feel like negative film criticism sort of like became the default, where it's like I've had this conversation with people too where I'm like, being critical doesn't necessarily mean you have to be negative. Like those are two different things. And if you sort of look at like, oh, criticism is inherently negative, then you're going to always sort of like lean in that direction. But I was like, that isn't the case. Like constructive criticism is not negative, or just like observational criticism. Like you don't have to be mean spirited in order to be like critical of something. And I think there's a particular difference in that mindset that like permeated a lot of critics culture, where it's like, oh, if you don't hate things, then like you don't really care. And I'm like, no, I just don't have the energy. I have a big heart, and there is room in it for a lot of different movies. And yes, I don't like love every single movie that I see, but I do legitimately love movies in general. And I love going to the movies. I love watching movies. And so it's really hard for me to be like, oh, this movie was like such a negative experience that I'm going to like be a fucking bitch about it and like
Yes.
try to make other people not like it. Like that's such a waste of my time, you know? So I feel like hopefully we move more and more away from that kind of thing, and just, yeah, you can be critical and be honest without being a fucking dickhead. So I feel like we are on our way there, but maybe not quite there yet, but starting to hopefully get there. Okay, so let's move up the board. We'll skip over the New York Post and we'll go to Entertainment Weekly. This is Adam Markowitz, gave it a 33. It says most of the movie's action horror set pieces play like lame Gwar music video outtakes, and Cage's signature mix of irony and off-the-rails mugging only works when you can see the actor's face. In Ghost Rider form, his character is just a skeletal automaton with neither a tongue nor a cheek to put in. I feel like that's just like factually inaccurate. Given what we've discussed, given the nature of the motion capture and what they did in the first movie, like that's just a factually inaccurate take.
Yep. Dude's not watching the same movie we were watching. Because, like, you know, we took time to talk about how impressive his work was as Ghost Rider. You know, the necessary physicality, the more attention to detail you have to put into your body when you're acting that way. Bah.
This dude copied the physical motions of his pet cobras to bring to the screen, and this asshole reviewer is like, hey, he's a skeletal automaton. Like, bro, you are not paying attention. But this is like kind of the point that I was making about like when you don't know sort of the background stuff, like the behind the scenes, the effort and the sort of intonation that went into the ideas in the film, it's very easy on the back end to just be like, oh, like I saw what I saw and I'm not invested and I don't care and I'm not interested in like actually changing my mind. But I think if you watch the first Ghost Rider and watch the second one and don't know anything about the difference between stunt actor Cage playing the character, it's night and day between like how the character moves, how he functions, how like he expresses himself. So to say that like either you didn't watch the first one and you have no point of comparison, or you just like don't care enough to have done your homework, and that's the kind of critic that gets to, you know, write something for a vehicle like Entertainment Weekly, which is kind of ridiculous. So anyway, we've got 240s on the board. It is Empire and The Hollywood Reporter. So you can choose between those two, and we'll read the lesser of two evils.
Let's choose the dark times. The Empire.
Helen O'Hara, like, quote, Ghost Rider Low Voltage, quote, this is a surprisingly underpowered excursion into Marvel's mad world by Neveldine and Taylor, more purgatory than hellfire. So this is like a Crank joke she's making, because Crank was called High Voltage.
People keep talking about like how they're trapped by this movie. I'm being trapped and tortured by this film. It's like purgatory. Just let me out. And yeah, what the fuck do you mean low voltage? Oh, that's funny. The film has tons of energy. Like, that's also what we were talking about, how it moves and it's so fun the whole time.
Yeah. The cameraman's wearing rollerblades, riding on the back of a motorcycle, zooming in and out of traffic in order to like get these shots. And it's like, this is low energy.
Yeah, they're hanging 150 feet in the air off a cliff. Forget about it. Ugh.
To get a shot that doesn't necessarily even need to be in the movie, but they're like, we want that shot, we're gonna get it. Okay, we've got let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 50s on the board. So there's one I'm gonna read, and then you can choose between the Tampa Bay Times, New York Magazine, which is now Vulture, Village Voice, and Box Office Magazine.
Okay. I guess I'll go with Village Voice, but you said you were going to read one first?
I'm going to read a separate one after Village Voice.
Lovely.
Okay, this is Nick Pinkerton. He says, Cageophiles will find some delectable freakouts in Blaze's transformation or near transformation scenes. Otherwise, the committee pen script combines yokel-friendly ha-ha irreverence, non sequitur cutaways to the writer pissing in a flamethrower pattern, and sweaty monologues about controlling the writer. The character is basically a mean drunks superhero. And I feel like that is said in like a negative context, but also like when this is a sort of allegory for addiction, like it makes sense.
And do they know Garth Ennis? Probably not. Really excited to find and read this book because it's not really at all the same story. I took a look at what it was about, but I think the imagery, the attitude, and the kind of lost, in need of a mission kind of place that the character of Ghost Rider is in at the beginning of that story is a lot of what inspired the jumping off point of this film, which is just a great new chapter for the character. And it's really good, I think, to do that, to kind of make those decisions and let it build for what's good for this movie right now.
I agree. All right. Last one on the board is my mother's former magazine, Movie Line magazine. This has no byline. It is just an empty pull quote. It says, the smugness of the film grows wearying long before the end. Just because the people on and behind the camera are willing to acknowledge what we're watching is ridiculous crap doesn't really change the fact that, well, it is. Interesting. Viewing this movie as smug is very perplexing to me.
Clutch my pearls.
I'm not sure
ridiculous crap.
Right? Where does like smugness come into the equation of this film? I don't see it. But that's why that magazine doesn't exist anymore, because writers are too afraid to put their names on pull quotes, and they stopped paying writers the way that they were supposed to. And now it is Young Hollywood, maybe?
Oh, shoot. Yeah, I don't know. Smugness. I don't know. I can't really pull, like, I've got strands of ideas. Like, maybe there were people in the audience laughing at things that critic didn't get. And so to them, that's smug because they're in on some joke that I'm being left out on. Like, I'm really stretching. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for me, I look at it like this movie would have to treat itself with some level of self-seriousness in order for it to even like begin to broach being a smug property. But this movie is like a fun romp through the Ghost Rider world.
It's PG-13 for fuck's sake. It has fun
being an action film. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. But again, there was no higher score than a 50 on the board, so we had to go with what was available to us. And like I said, I knew there was going to be at least one sort of punny type of takeaway, and we got it in the first one. So, all right, leave Critters Corner behind. Now I want to know, what would be your gateway drug movie for Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance?
You know what I'm going to say?
I don't, but I'm hopeful.
Turbo Kid.
Okay.
Turbo Kid is a Canadian-French indie film about a post-apocalyptic wasteland where instead of motorcycles, we have BMX bicycles.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a hero's journey thing with, you know, a best friend, and Michael Ironside is in it as the big bad. It's got a lot of charm and a lot of graphic violence and very cheeky kind of, you know, Midnight Black humor.
Okay. It's a good one. I mean, I think obviously the first Ghost Rider is probably like a safe bet, but I'm going to say Ang Lee's Hulk, because I feel like in terms of like adaptations of like including the comic book experience on screen, it's actually one of the best comic book movies in that way. It's one of my favorite portrayals of Hulk. Granted, like some of the villain fight stuff is just like, okay, it's just another big monster kind of thing, but yeah, I really like that movie. It's one that I want to include. I got to reach out to my guy Dara, who wanted to talk about it. Make sure that I get him back on the show. But yeah, it's very like comic book heavy, and in a way that was apparently off-putting to people that supposedly like comic books. So not really sure exactly how that translates, but I could see how like a general audience is like, I don't like seeing the edges of these, you know, I don't like seeing the frames on the pages for the cells and stuff when you're flipping through scenes. I don't like these transitions. It looks like I'm reading a book, and it's like, do you get it yet? So in the same way that Ghost Rider probably offends people with its animation in this movie, I think that Hulk movie also offended a lot of people with its stylistic choices, but it's still a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to rewatching it. But we've arrived at the end of our Ghost Rider.
It's
journey.
a big swing that a lot of people weren't ready for.
It wasn't, and maybe it'll have more legs now, but probably not at this point, to be honest. Hulk seems to be a single movie property that they struggle with. But for you don't struggle with properties. You've got a lot of them under your belt over at Movies for Days. So why don't you tell people about the show and where they can find you?
Sure, man. Thanks again for having me.
Of course.
You can find me, Newman the Film Rat, and my show, Movies for Days, your non-pretentious, easy access movie chat podcast. Every Friday, taking a deep dive into any movie from any decade with anybody's guess as to how we chose that movie that week. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, either at Movies Days or at Movies for Days. I'm also on the Slasher app at Movies for Days. And you can find all of my episodes at yourunpodcast.com, because I am a proud member of the You Run Podcast Network. I smoke a lot of weed, and I don't like doing the same thing all the time. So when you tune into my show, it might be one of my many sub-series. Boldly Going Somewhere, my Star Trek series. I Am Batman. Tarantino Jamborino. Top 5 Flicks with Phil, which is me and my actual brother Phil. And Classic Corner with Mom, which, yes, is on Classic Films, and is always with my actual mom. All this and more at Movies for Days. We've been going 7 years, and we ain't tired of it yet. So come hang out. Let's talk about movies.
Yeah, it's a good show. You get plenty of bang for your proverbial buck. You do, of course, your Rage for Cage as well. So if you like Nick Cage stuff, like you got a whole sub-series dedicated just to the man himself. So check it out. Especially after listening to this, go listen to some of those Cage episodes. There's a bunch of them. I've been on the show too. If that'll help you push play, you can listen to those episodes, and then that'll be your gateway drug in there. Buddy, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I'm glad that we got to do this. I'm glad that you were here for both sides of the Ghost Rider coin. And if they make a third one at some point, I think we'll obviously be back to talk about it.
You're going to have to bar your door to keep me away, dude. Yeah, thanks again for having me. It was a pleasure, as always. I look forward to our next chat.
Absolutely, man. You have yourself a good rest of your day.
You too.
Thanks again to Newman for coming on the show. It's always fun to talk to him, and especially when we get to share in our love of Nicolas Cage. He's got a sub-series called Rage for Cage over on his show Movies for Days. So if you had fun listening to us chat, then make sure you check out Movies for Dayz. I will make sure to have the link for that up for you in the show notes. A quick shout out to our contributing members, Melissa, Nathan, Donnie, Josie, Sean, Ben, Ciaran, and Kristen. Thank you all for continuing to support the show. The membership sign-up link and the link for the listener survey are both up in the show notes. The survey is completely anonymous, so you can tell me exactly what you think without any fear of hurting my feelings. And as I've said many times before, I still believe word of mouth is the best way to help. So if you like the show, please share it with a friend or a colleague or a family member or even a stranger. That can be anything from sharing the show and the episodes on social media or literally just telling someone, hey, there's this show that I think you might like. I know there is a large number of options when it comes to podcasts, and time is valuable. So I appreciate you choosing to spend your time listening to Bad Movies We Love. Thanks again for listening to the show and helping to make it one of the best independent movie podcasts around. It really is a labor of love. Bad Movies We Love is written, directed, recorded, produced, and edited by me at the Shice Podcast Studios. I am most active on Instagram, but you can follow the show socials at Bad Movies We Love, spelled L-U-V, on Instagram and Twitter, and follow SheistPodNet on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Twitter for updates across the whole network. So until next time, take care.